Welcome to the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, telling the unique stories that make up the diverse fabric of Pennsylvania.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another journey through Pennsylvania's past and present. I'm Sydney Harris-White, your host. I'm sure everyone is feeling the buzz of the holiday season. Of course, the temperatures are dropping, the nights are growing darker earlier, and the trees have officially lost their beautiful northeastern famous colors. But despite this, Pennsylvanians have an incredible ability to ring in the holiday season with light, warmth, and celebration. Everywhere you look, decorations are hung, people are smiling, and sweet music fills the air. We have festivals, tree lightings, and holiday markets. We are not defined by the dark and cold, but by the way we create warmth and light. Pennsylvania's perseverance is shown in our unwavering commitment to making the most of every season and turning it into something truly magical. In that same spirit of perseverance and creating magic, today we're traveling to the Wellsboro Glass Factory. Joining us is Kylie Birgensmith, treasurer of the Wellsboro Glass Historical Association, to talk about its history, how Wellsboro became known as the town that saved Christmas, and how that legacy continues to shape the community today. Kylie, thank you so much for being here. We're so happy to have you.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here.
Can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your role with the Wellsboro Glass Historical Association and how you became involved?
I am originally from Hanover, Pennsylvania, and moved to Mansfield, Pennsylvania for college. After graduating in 2015, I settled in Wellsboro and worked for a local accounting firm. I heard about the Wellsboro Glass Historical Association through a Chamber of Commerce event and was immediately interested by the historical significance of the glass plant. Then in 2023, I was downsized along with 180 of my colleagues and found myself with time on my hands. So I dove into archival work and interviews for Wellsboro Glass and found a strong connection to the former employees of the plant who had lost their jobs when the plant closed in 2016.
You became involved with the Historical Association through chance. What grew your interest for that?
Yeah, it really was chance. I have a strong interest in history, learning about, the past of our country and things around the world. And when I learned about how suddenly the plant closed, I just felt really connected because I had lost my job so suddenly also. So I felt connected to these people who I'd never met before, and they started to share with me about the work they were doing there, the innovation and really creativity of the people to keep jobs there, to grow the work there, and have this strong kind of industrial foundation for the town.
Oh, that sounds incredible. I'm so glad that you were able to find a connection there. Can you give us a quick overview of Wellsboro's connection to glassmaking and how it became such a defining part of the community's identity?
Yeah, so glass was a booming industry back in the late 1800s. Thomas Edison had just patented the incandescent light bulb in 1879. For Wellsboro at the time, the primary industries were farming, dairy processing, maple production, and logging primarily. Local businessman J.J. Fitzpatrick proposed building a glass factory in Wellsboro to local bankers, and it took a few years, but they agreed, and the factory was built in 1886. So that first factory burned down actually 2 years after it opened, and in just 3 months, they had it back in operations. It burned down again and changed ownership many times over the next around 30 years. And then in 1916, the plant was sitting idle, and a group of businessmen from Wellsboro formed the Chamber of Commerce and then approached Corn and Glass Works in New York to propose expanding their operations into northern Pennsylvania. Corn and Glass accepted that proposal and, brought the plant back to operations, which was really significant and allowed Wellsboro to then be a part of providing lighting around the world, and especially in Paris, which was known as the City of Lights. And Paris had historically relied on Germany for supply of their light bulbs prior to World War I. So the plant, had a substantial need and quickly grew from 100 employees to 650 by 1920.
And so you mentioned the Corning Glass Works and them becoming a hub for the creation of the light bulb in 1916. What do you think it was about Wellsboro that made it such a natural home for glass innovation?
I think there were several factors that made Wellsboro a natural home for glass innovation, primarily the availability of natural resources and the spirit of the people. There was abundant availability of the components needed to produce glass, including sand, soda ash, ore clay, stone coal, and lime in the nearby town of Blossburg, along with iron ore and limestone available in Covington and Richmond Township. They used coal to produce coal glass in the plant. They had this room where they heated the coal through a process called pyrolysis, where the coal was heated in an oxygen-deprived environment, and the resulting gas was burned to melt the glass. So they were able to reach that high temperature, that high heat they need to melt large amounts of glass. The other necessary component for success was the creative, persistent, and innovative spirit of the people that I mentioned. To quote the former Corning Glass president, Dr. Eugene C. Sullivan, "The helpfulness and general character of the people of Wellsboro and vicinity soon convinced us that our choice of this good borough was no mistake. The production of these boys who had no experience with glass was always better than that of experienced glass workers. This was mostly because they had no preconceived notions on why something could not be done." So when we read about the story of the workers at that time, it was like they were never saying no. There was no challenge they were unwilling to take on, and they were always working to try and find a better way to do things, a more efficient way to produce light bulbs and other glass goods.
Speaking of innovation, it'd be hard to have this conversation without acknowledging that it is the holiday season. So I'd love to talk about Wellsboro's famous ornaments. Can you share how those ornaments came to be, and how did Wellsboro come to play such an important role in creating some of the first American-made ornaments?
So Wellsboro first had to produce light bulbs before it was able to produce glass ornaments. Wellsboro was home to the invention of the ribbon machine under the direction of Billy Woods. He was from Corning and came down to Wellsboro and became the plant supervisor in 1916. So he oversaw the invention of this ribbon machine, and the invention revolutionized the production of glass light bulbs by allowing mass production of the bulbs rather than having to individually hand blow each bulb. The machine was later recognized as an International Historic Mechanical Engineering Landmark by the American Society of Mechanical Engineers, and it was identified as one of the top 10 engineering marvels of the 20th century. So the ribbon machines allowed for production of 1 million bulbs per day. And prior to World War II, virtually all Christmas ornaments, around 95%, were produced in Germany. So in the late 1930s, as the war is ramping up, retailers and distributors were concerned about maintaining supply of ornaments to the American public as imports from Germany were shut down. Realizing the similarity of light bulbs to ornaments, Woolworth suppliers visited the Wellsboro plant to see if they were willing and able to modify the ribbon machine to create those glass Christmas ornaments and kind of continue production here in the U.S. rather than relying on importing from elsewhere. Edward Liebig was Wellsboro's plant manager at the time, and he accepted that challenge from the Woolworth suppliers and then oversaw the creation of new molds in 1939, which were, fitted onto the ribbon machine to produce those ornaments. In that first year, they produced 1 million ornament blanks that were shipped out to be finished at other factories. And then in 1940, they added silvering and lacquering machines within the plant so they could produce 40 million finished ornaments in 1940. And that's how Wellsboro became known as the town that saved Christmas.
40 million is a huge number, and I can't believe that all came from Wellsboro. And so you mentioned...
Yeah, it's really unbelievable.
It is. I wrote that down because I'm like, that's huge, especially in the 1940s. Yeah. So you mentioned that your town is known as the town that saved Christmas. I absolutely love that, and it's so intriguing. And so I just wanted to talk to you a little bit more about it. What does this saying mean to you, and how do you see that legacy reflected in the community today?
I think it is a powerful statement, but you might be surprised to hear that at the time, the locals did not understand the impact their work had across the country and around the globe. So the purpose of Wellsboro Glass Historical Association is to shine a light on that story and the efforts of the people, especially during World War II when Wellsboro became the town that saved Christmas. Back in 1942, President Roosevelt established the War Production Board, which rationed certain commodities and directed factories to produce certain goods. So the plant wasn't actually allowed to produce ornaments from 1942 until 1945. The plant's focus became production of light bulbs, glass tubes, radio tubes, materials needed for radios and radar, television, things that were more important than ornaments at the time. But with that 40 million they'd produced, the years earlier, people had ornaments in their homes that they could use. It's also highly probable that the Wellsboro plant manufactured the glass casings or shells for miniaturized electronic vacuum tubes that were used in World War II proximity fuses. The tubes had to withstand high G forces from being fired out of artillery. And so the tubes had to be annealed, which is a special process of slowly heating less and less until they cool so that there's low residual stress on the glass. And the Johns Hopkins University Applied Physics Lab actually developed these tubes and sourced these tubes from many plants. But factories like the Wellsboro Glass plant actually didn't know for certain what the end use was of their goods, but they do know they were creating a similar tube and shipping it to the nearby Sylvania plant in Bradford County. So it's really likely that those parts were being used in our proximity fuses for World War II. So looking at World War II, 324 employees of the plant left to join the military and serve in the war, which left a lot of vacant positions at the plant. And those positions were really quickly filled by local women. For many of them, it was actually their first opportunity to work outside of their home. And of those 324 employees that served, 8 did not make it back home. Then in 1945, as I mentioned, the War Production Board allowed the glass plant to return to producing Christmas ornaments. And to commemorate the return of those employees from World War II, Ellsworth Brown produced this red, white, blue, and gold ornament flag back in 1946. And that flag remains on display in the lobby of the Penwells Hotel in Wellsboro today. I think that's a big source of pride for the community. The Glass Association had it cleaned and kind of restored last year, and tourists come in and visit and look at that flag year round.
That's quite incredible, especially hearing how many of the people of Wellsboro went to World War II, didn't come back, and that those that did, your town honored when they were allowed to make ornaments again, they made it for their people. That's beautiful.
Yes,
and
exactly.
That's really wonderful to hear. And so when we talk about the impact of your ornaments, I'd love to talk about what they mean for Pennsylvania. So when you think about the ornaments made here at Wellsboro, from the early Shine Bright designs, the flag, for an example, as an early design, and later to Hallmark collectibles, what makes them stand out especially as a part of Pennsylvania's story?
There was a lot of innovation around ornaments, especially during and I guess after World War II when they were allowed again to produce. So the Shiny Brights were really, the plant here was producing the blank for the ornament and then shipping it out to be finished elsewhere. And I think at times we were lacquering our own ornaments and producing similar kind of shiny ornaments. And for Hallmark collectibles, again, it was finishing it with someone else's design. But I think what was really special was the employees had this strong sense of patriotism, and they decided to break away from the traditional European designs. You mentioned, some of the flags in different shapes that they were in. And a lot of that innovation came from 2 employees in Tioga County, Ellsworth Brown and Carlton Hayes, which designed more modern ornaments with bold forms, geometric patterns, and just unusual shapes that hadn't been seen before for ornaments like bells, pine cones, reflectors, lanterns, and flame-shaped bulbs. They innovated these new shapes that no one had seen before and created the molds that could be used to mass produce these on the ribbon machines. And then the ornaments made in Wellsboro had metal caps stamped with "Made in USA" on the top. So when World War II required rationing of metals, they produced some ornaments with cardboard caps when they were allowed. And I think it's actually important to note that most people across the country and around the globe had no idea those ornaments were coming from Wellsboro, let alone from Pennsylvania.
That is amazing. And I love what you said, "Made in USA" right on the top of the ornament. That's such an important factor, I think, especially after World War II, the patriotism that's coming out of it. And then just even in small things like looking at your Christmas ornament, you can feel that patriotism that this was made in the United States, made in Pennsylvania. It's something that I'm assuming stuck with them.
there was a lot of pride there, and people really put a lot of effort into the work they were doing and trying to be innovative and creative, this pride and patriotism, I guess, are the words.
The Wellsboro plant employed generations of families and thousands of workers over the years. How did that sense of pride and community shape the town, especially during the holidays?
The glass industry truly made Wellsboro because the plant employed so many people, as you mentioned. In 1945, their payroll was $1.75 million, which is unbelievable to think, 80 years ago, to have a payroll that large for just 1 year. So that large workforce and growing workforce created this need for housing, for schools, for infrastructure. And so the town was built in part because of that need. So as you noted, many generations of families worked in the plant. So even today, there's this strong sense of connection. People stop in at the museum and they tell us stories about their aunt that worked there and was the first to work as a woman in a certain role, or their grandfather that oversaw a certain team. And they just feel the sense of pride of what their family did there. And I think there's also this little bit of sadness, that the plant was closed and that people couldn't continue that generational tradition of working there. One of the most celebrated events is the annual Laurel Festival, held every June since 1938. And Corning Glassworks used to produce a float every year for that parade, but eventually actually had to take themselves out of the running because they won too many times. They just produced these really beautiful floats with crushed glass, and it was glittery and sparkly, and really showed that pride in the glass that they were producing.
I'd love to shift gears a little bit here and talk about the Historical Association. You're working to keep the story of Wellsboro Glass Works alive. Can you talk a little bit about the association? How are you preserving and sharing this incredible story? What kinds of exhibits, collections, or events help keep this legacy alive?
The primary way we're preserving and sharing the story is via our museum in Wellsboro. It's a temporary home right now, but we have chronological displays spanning from the late 1800s until the plant's closure in 2016. And the story is significant, not just for Wellsboro, but in the legacy of American industry. And we feel that the story needs to be told. It needs to be preserved. So we are searching for that permanent home and hope to find it someday. But for now, that temporary home is a great space for us. We host various events there at the museum and also in the town, including Christmas on Main Street. We recently began hosting coffee and conversation events at the museum, which is geared towards bringing former employees to connect and share their stories with visitors and staff at the museum. We also started hosting regular presentations titled our Speaker Series, where presenters share detailed information about pieces of the Wellsboro glass plant history that they find especially interesting.
I imagine the holidays are a special time for your organization based on, everything that we're talking about today. How does the Historical Association celebrate or highlight Wellsboro's connection to Christmas each year?
So there's two main events that are hosted each year in Wellsboro that really celebrate Christmas. One is Dickens of a Christmas, and the second is Christmas on Main Street. And then every year, the chamber also oversees putting up Christmas trees down Main Street by the historic gas lights. It's just so beautiful, especially if it starts snowing. Dickens of a Christmas features an early Victorian-style marketplace with vendors and performers dressed in Victorian-era attire. The town is filled with vendors, food, and Christmas carolers, so it really feels like stepping back in time during that event. Then we have Christmas on Main Street, which is run by the Wellsboro Glass Historical Association, and it has a focus on downtown walking tours about the history of the town. We put displays up with historical ornaments that were produced here in Wellsboro, and we share about that history, about their production. The Glass Museum is open during both of those events, so we're there to tell the story and help people gain a better understanding of what this town did, how it produced these ornaments, and the impact that it had.
I was hoping you were going to say that that those ornaments are on display, because I think a lot of our listeners and me, even myself would love to see them. That's so incredible, and I'm so happy to hear that you're keeping them alive by including them in your celebration every year.
Yes, yeah, and they're on display at the museum. We get people stopping in and looking at those ornaments, questioning those, and some of the people that are stopping in are people that either donated those ornaments or their family members were ones that helped make those ornaments so many years ago. There's constantly people sharing these stories about the ornaments.
So when people visit the museum or learn about Wellsboro Glass through some of these stories that are being told, what surprises them most about the factory's role in both everyday life and in the holiday tradition?
I think the most surprising fact for our visitors is that during the mid-20th century, nearly every house in the United States had something made here at the Wellsboro Glass plant, be it, radio tubes in their radio or their television, glass light bulbs, Christmas ornaments. Most people were really surprised by that, not realizing that so many of those products were produced here in Wellsboro. And for a long time, Wellsboro was the only factory producing ornaments in the United States. So a lot of people are surprised by that. And I think secondarily surprised to learn about the connections with World War I and World War II.
I definitely was. I knew about the connection with World War II, but learning about World War I also was really interesting to hear. And we've looked a lot at the past. I'd love to look ahead a little bit. What are some of the Historical Association's goals for the coming years, especially as we approach America's 250th anniversary?
Our short-term goals are to continue to build our membership and subscribers for our newsletter, continue to get people in to see the museum and understand the significance of the history there. And then as we approach America's 250th anniversary in 2026, it's also the 100th anniversary of the invention of the ribbon machine that I mentioned earlier. So we're really excited to celebrate that significant piece of American industrial history. And then as far as long-term goals, we plan to open a permanent museum to house the 2 ribbon machines that we own, along with all the various artifacts that we've collected. So if anyone has extra space to store these massive, massive machines, please contact us, contact the Glass Association. That's our true goal, getting that home for those machines.
I was wondering if you could tell our listeners how they can get involved with the association. Is there anywhere they can find information, how they can volunteer, how they can donate?
There are so many different ways people could get involved with the Wellsboro Glass Historical Association. First one, easiest, I think, being just look us up online. We have a website with so much detailed history about everything that we know about so far that went on at the glass plant. We have a Facebook page. I'm working on an Instagram, so that's coming. But our Facebook, we regularly post about the events going on at the museum, the speakers that we're having come in, special things on display. We sometimes kind of rotate through. So Facebook's a good way to get information. And then past that, if someone's maybe more local and wanting to get involved, we are always looking for volunteers. There's many different roles that a person can play to support us, however their skill set works. Like I started with archiving way back, a few years ago and learned about how to photograph the different ornaments and glass pieces and how to document those and the characteristics of them. And then I learned how to interview different former employees and significant local individuals that have knowledge of the plant. So I performed various interviews and recorded those, and anyone, could do that. It's as simple as asking questions like this podcast. So another way would be volunteering as a docent for the museum. I am one of the docents. We have many docents, and all it entails is spending a few hours at the museum, answering people's questions as they come in. And really, I enjoy volunteering as a docent because it gives me time to be there and to read the material and to gain more knowledge about it. So there's many other ways people could get involved. So if anyone is interested, again, just contact us. Our Facebook page, you could use Messenger, or our email address is on the website.
We are coming to a close for today's episode, but before I let you go, I wanted to know, when you decorate your own tree each year, what goes through your mind knowing that so much of America's Christmas sparkle started right there in Wellsboro?
So, Sydney, I have to be honest, I don't decorate a tree, but the town of Wellsboro really provides all of the Christmas that I need. I love seeing the Christmas trees go up on Main Street every year under the gas lights. And like I said, when it snows, it's just so beautiful. It's like being transported back in time. I walk the streets, most of the shops, they decorate, and people around here just really get into the Christmas spirit.
Well, that's incredible. I'm so glad that you can Experience the Christmas, even if you don't decorate your tree. Experience the joy of the holiday season, especially as it pertains to Wellsboro and its really incredible history. Thank you so much, Kylie, for being here. It's been an honor to speak with you and an honor to learn more about Wellsboro's historic significance.
It was great being here. I appreciate you taking the time to learn about Wellsboro Glass.
What a wonderful story of how a PA town's craftsmanship, invention, and resilience before and during World War I and World War II allowed holiday cheer to shine on. Wellsboro didn't just make ornaments. It helped to shape the joy, light, and tradition of the season. We'd like to thank Kylie once again for sharing the history of the Wellsboro Glass Factory, the story of how its ornaments became part of our nation's celebrations, and how the Wellsboro Glass Historical Association continues to share Wellsboro's sparkling legacy. As we look ahead to America's 250th anniversary, may we all remember that our history isn't only written in books. It radiates in the moments and memories we continue to create. Wishing you all a very happy holiday season. Stay warm, stay cheerful, and stay PA proud.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cassandra Coleman, Executive Director of America 250 PA. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. We encourage you to learn more about America 250 PA and send us your podcast ideas at america250pa.org.
This has been the America 250 PA Start Here, America Did podcast, produced by Commonwealth Media Services. Stay tuned for more epic Pennsylvania stories at america250pa.org.